Hi guys, until the end here, time to do a just impromptu discussion because over the past couple of weeks been listening to a lot of, Battlefield YouTubers, listening kind of to the community, and I've been really thinking about where the franchise is going, especially the past week. A lot of the mainline Battlefield YouTubers, Jack Frags, Level Cap, and the was it the British Tactical Gamer, Tactical Brit, that's what it is. They're all talking about, the kind of an identity crisis of Battlefield. And I can't help but agree with a lot of the stuff that they've kind of overlaid. And, there's been a lot of decisions made within DICE and within the franchise itself that have not made sense. And every time I come back to Battlefield 4, I think, man, 5 years. Like, what the heck has happened over the course of 5 years? Because this game was, so incredible now to me that every time I go back to play, I mean, yeah, sure, there's a lot of stuff that's still bullshit and will always be a pain in the ass. But besides that, it's, I'm looking towards, my excitement to what the next Battlefield title is, and I don't even know anymore. The disappointment that came out of Battlefield 5, all the decisions they made for that game, just never made it. So many concepts, so many thoughts that they went into were either implemented terribly or were made half-assed and were never fully completed, and it's really disappointing. And people keep asking they want to go back to the older games, the feeling of the older games. But to be honest, the just like how Jack Frack said it, Battlefield has now been defined by almost 3 different generations of Battlefield players. I mean, you have the original OG guys that I never actually got to experience, Battlefield 2, 1942, all those guys who experienced this massive warfare battles. Then you kind of got my era, which I came under the console Battlefield Bad Company games, and they were a lot more smaller, closer quartered battles, very linear. And then BF3, BF4 kind of introduced the large scale again, but still definitely kept it very linear. Now, granted, keep in mind when I say BF3, I'm talking about the PS3 version, which only allowed 24 people on a server compared to PC's 64 player master race. And I think I might have my own little discussion about how I honestly feel about 64 player battles now as I'm getting older playing this game. But besides the main point, I'm really confused to where even DICE will go with the future title. I mean, there could be a possibility that they are gonna go back to their roots and maybe bring back a little bit more of a connected experience, like a more smaller battles, like in the Bad Company days. But they might try to go back to bigger scale, like they do with these 2 titles. But I don't know. Either way, they gotta find a way to stick to it, because the part that's been most frustrating about BF5 is the lack of dedication towards, one element that would define Battlefield in of itself. All the individual game modes they've been coming out with have almost been like little, like dipping their toe in to see what people like in certain elements. And which is great for like in general feedback, but when your base game doesn't have enough content to fulfill itself, it's getting ridiculous. Now we've added a battle royale into the situation with Firestorm, and I just wonder what's the point of playing Battlefield 5. Like, it is a new game, it's an enjoyable game to some extent, but there's way too many problems with the gunplay. Vehicular combat is a massive disappointment. That's my nice way of saying it, to be honest. The progression in the game is still pretty much non-existent, which is something that's been one of the hardest things to overcome in a Battlefield game for me. And then you got the map variety, which I don't know. I'm pretty tired of the maps. A lot of other people will say the same stuff. But besides the point, I think the biggest part that makes Battlefield 5 such a disappointment is you could gather a group of random gamers together and say, create a World War II battlefield, and there's so many different things that they could create in the back of their heads that sound like better games than what we actually got. Now, I have to say though, it is very clear that Battlefield 5 was an incomplete game when it came out, and this is a constant theme that's happened with the Battlefield games. We'll never really know why this happens. It could be because the Frostbite engine, as kind of told from other developers, is absolutely terrible to work with, and maybe DICE suffers from it too. I mean, it's a beautiful engine, but obviously there is problems with bugs. There's problems with just getting all this content to the game. The only reason why Battlefield 4 is runs so smoothly on the PS4 and Xbox One is because it came from the previous console generation. So, compared to BF1, I mean, Battlefield Hardline technically came on the last gen console too, so it did have the predecessor. Basically, they made the Frostbite engine be able to, not be as fully sophisticated and developed. They hindered it so it could be playable on all the consoles. But now we've got BF1 and BF5, where these guys are trying to max out Frostbite engine to improve graphical fidelity, but meanwhile, my poor ass who only wants to play in console has to wait because the loading times are terrible, the pop-in is terrible on some of the maps. Like, in general, there's so many parts that I could just rip apart Battlefield 5 and ask why was it rushed, why is there so many aspects of the game that should be there, like, the U.S. soldiers, all the particular weapons of World War II. I mean, they're doing a little bit better getting those in, but it's just, how can I be excited over the next Battlefield game when its previous title is an absolute shithole of inconsistency and just borderline not fun, And I really question whether or not, there should be a longer wait for the Battlefield game in the first place, but it's just not, it doesn't make financial sense. You look at how much stuff DICE has to make on with the different games. They're still working on Battlefront 2. They're, implementing stuff in the Firestorm into the main game of Battlefield 5. There's just so many elements that are going around in this frantic spray of chaos. It just doesn't feel like there's a great direction when it comes to a release of a title. And I mean, if they come out with a trailer this year, I might get excited over it. But especially with all the community decisions they've made, the connections that they've made and severed within the player base, I really question why I should be excited for this game anymore. It's a really tough time to be a fan of first-person shooters like this one for me, and arcade racing games, because both of the aspects of those industries have been really lacking. Crew 2 is getting a little bit better, but that's a totally different discussion. But now that I've kind of got this weird little rant thing out of the way, I think I'm going to be dedicating some more time. This is more of a channel announcement, by the way. That I'm going to dedicate some time to make some videos that actually talk a little bit more in depth and start becoming a little more involved with video editing and stuff like that. Actually make some stuff that's visually presentable for you guys. I really want to talk about vehicles in Battlefield, how much they've honestly changed just within my generation. My biggest problem is I want to get footage from my PS3, and it's still difficult to get recording software. I mean, it's older now, so it's probably a little bit cheaper, but I just need to sit down, take dedicated time to do it. I also want to get a better microphone just to make my voice not sound like it's coming from a radio feed back in like a military war of 2004, 2005. Nah, it's a ridiculous joke, but besides the point, I really want to make some discussions about the Battlefield vehicles in general, because I'm a very, as you can see in this video, very avid person of using vehicular combat in Battlefield games. I also really want to talk about Need for Speed, especially with the announcement that that police are now going to be a focus in the next Need for Speed game, which is interesting, but also really concerning. So I think one of the best ways to talk about the game itself is I want to just do some visual discussions and comparisons over the those. So that is on my to-do list. Other than that, sorry, this is like a spontaneous, random, kind of all over the place, but I just really want to get my thoughts down on the concern I have for the future titles from DICE, because I lost confidence with them back in Star Wars Battlefront, and it's just been a steady decline ever since. I mean, a lot of people say great things about Battlefield 1, and you have to give them credit where credit is due. That game has now smoothed itself out, made itself a better title for their group of people, the newest era Battlefield players who liked a little bit more of that casual feeling. But I personally never liked that game in the first place. Didn't really like the era, didn't like the vehicle combat, didn't like... I can go on and on. I don't want to be a negative Nancy here, but I'm trying to be hopeful. I'm trying to stay positive, but in the world where so many elements that I've enjoyed in my youthful day, my young gamer teenager days, have been flipped on their heads and are now pretty much always in the spotlight of hate and just disappointment, it's hard not to kind of feel the same way. So if you actually sat through all this, really appreciate it. Like I said, over the course of the summer, I think I'm going to really dedicate myself to making some better YouTube videos, because I want to talk about games. I want to talk about some video games that I think have been overshadowed by their newest iterations, and I think it might be a good idea to go back and take a look at some older games and see what us gamers can really remember and learn from what previous games in general showed us. So other than that, that's all I got for you guys today. So I hope you guys have a good one, and take care.
You probably should just get ready, huh?
Yeah, probably. Well, I went 32-1.
What about me? Oh my god.
That was
I
amazing.
suck.